I'm sorry I can't be with you all today, but I wanted to make sure I could introduce this very exciting event that Robert and I have prepared just for you. Welcome to LATINXT. Through my work in the film industry, I have heard the talent is not out there line way too many times when referring to our community. We all know that that is just not true. There are many talented, hard-working people that are on the verge of greatness, but have yet to cross the mainstream gates. Since our resources, mentorship, and access are not always available, Robert and I knew supporting the talent of the future was our responsibility. So we created LATINXT, a curated list of powerful creative voices that are poised to become the next generation of leaders. Next time someone tells you that talent is just not out there, show them this list. The talent is here. It is working. It is already contributing to the industry, and we are ready for more. To tell you more about what LATINXT means to us, here's my friend and filmmaking titan, Robert Rodriguez.
Uno, dos, tres.
I like this. The crowd gets bigger every year. This is wonderful. When Zoe, Lynn, and I set up to make this list, we had a couple of very clear guidelines in place. Talent needed to be mid-career, have a portfolio of work to show for it, and they needed to be US Latinx. So we honor and celebrate the contributions of our Latin American colleagues. We cheer for Yalitza, and we dance to Celso Piña, and we cherish our common language and history. But the experience of US Latinos is diverse, unique, and in need of representation. And I'm Texan, I'm also Latino and American. Texas! And my family has been in South Texas since the 1750s. And none of those identities exclude one another. This country needs stories and storytellers that are able to capture this beauty and complexity, because that makes up the texture of our nation. Tonight we present those voices to you. I knew the message behind our cause had to come from someone who not only understood the Latinx experience, but embodied it. She's an example of igniting change from within and knows how worthy and pivotal Latinx people are to the economic prosperity of our nation. She's been the unapologetic voice in every boardroom, every briefing, every pitch, by shifting the conversation and focusing on our community. One of my greatest allies. She is tireless champion in media representation. She is our Chief Growth Officer of La Reina, a Vice media company, and first and foremost, she's our dear friend. Please welcome Teresa Vargas Wyatt.
Uno, dos, tres.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zoe and Robert, for that introduction. How do we go beyond representation and inclusion? We empower. We share the keys to the gates by celebrating those who are bringing our stories to life with authenticity and care, and reclaim our monumental part in the fabric of the United States of America. For far too long, we have allowed the media to tell us who we are, lumping us together in a monolith that simplifies and erases our true identity. But today we say, ya basta. We've had enough. Like any story worth telling, Latinx narratives thrive on their cultural specificity, and the artists of today are redefining what it means to be an American. Latinx people are intersectional. We're loud and quiet. We're brown and black. We're straight and queer. And yes, we experience trauma, but we also experience joy. And what is more joyful than freeing ourselves from societal expectations? We no longer look to convince people that our stories matter. Instead, we stand in our truth. History is here to support us. We've always been here, and we're not going anywhere. We've been moving the cultural compass from the very beginning. Unfortunately, the United States is suffering from a moral crisis where the lives of our brown brothers and sisters have become talking points for racist rhetoric, which strips us of our humanity. We've been under attack through a continuous and incessant campaign of fear-mongering against our hard-working communities that we so deeply love. But there's a way in. Remember, a screen, big or small, is a door that you bring to your home. A door that gives you an entry into the lives of people that you never met. Stories that you've never heard. Cultures that you've never experienced. Now more than ever should those screens portray a true and accurate reflection of our stories. As we have an emerging chance to introduce ourselves and show those who are afraid of us how much there is to learn and love about us. Remember, our Latinx stories are American stories, and we are no longer apologizing for them. And for those artists feeling like this country does not see you, know that we, your familia, see you. We see your path, we see your challenges, and we see your uniqueness and beauty. Latinx and Latitude are about celebrating unfiltered, unapologetic, and brave Latinx storytellers as they uplift their communities and inspire the next generation. The late Toni Morrison said, "The function of freedom is to free someone else." You are both the result of those before you, and you are responsible for those after you. Light the way.
These creators had led their talent to shows that were made with no examples to follow. To moderate, please welcome to the stage, One Day at a Time co-showrunner, Gloria Calderón Kellett.
Uno, dos, tres.
Hola, hola mi gente. ¿Cómo están? Okay, let's do this beautiful, beautiful panel. Let's bring out all of the panelists, and then I'll tell you about them as they're walking out. Terry Weinberg, co-executive producer, Peabody, Golden Globe, and Emmy-winning The Office, Ugly Betty, and Killing Kennedy. And she has a new show called Hentified, which is coming out to Netflix soon. Terry, come on out. I think they're literally getting mic'd at the moment. She's not mic'd. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Naima Ramos Chapman has had a busy year writing and directing for multiple upcoming series for Starz, HBO, and Showtime, as well as her successful show, Random Acts of Flyness for HBO. This awesome Afro-Latina is known for her first short film, And Nothing Happened, which debuted at Slam Dance. And she is directing for Brujas and for How to Make Love to a Black Woman. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, that's what it says. And then Ser Astwanegi is a non-binary actor who plays the role of Eddie in Vida, which was recently renewed for season 3 on Starz. They have had a successful theater career, have been on East Los High, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, The Fosters, Shameless, Latino TV 101. Welcome to this amazing panel. Hi, Terry.
That's a Gloria.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks, Sarah. So basically, we want to do this sort of like a little coffee talk conversation because we're all out there doing the thing, making the stuff. So this is such an incredible opportunity for us to talk amongst ourselves about what's going on. So I'm going to start, Terry, with you. And can you tell us a little bit about Hentified? And you've had such an incredible career thus far. What led you to this and making this type of Latinx story in this moment?
The voice, the story. I mean, that's always what drives me. The uniqueness of and the authentic point of view that Marvin Lemus and Linda Yvette Chavez brought in telling the stories from their hearts, and from their souls, and from their guts. And when I first I was brought in after it was a digital series, and I just identified something in those characters in this family that we had not seen that representation on television. We have an artist, we have a chef, we have intelligent, beautiful people with aspirations and goals in their life, and I felt like it was something that I had to be a part of. And I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Do we have a date yet of when it's premiering?
We don't.
Not yet. Okay. It's
very
coming
soon
to Netflix.
on Netflix.
It's coming to Netflix, y'all. So I want to ask you now about your show, The Random Acts of Flyness, and how did that come about? And it's such a beautiful, I saw some as I was driving down, it's such a beautiful show that I didn't know existed on HBO until I had the privilege of sitting with you and knowing you. Tell us about it and how it came about.
Yeah, so Random Acts of Flyness, it's a show on HBO, late night comedy sketch show, although I feel like that description evades the stream of consciousness sort of assemblage that it really is, and it's sort of a reflection on conversations about race, about ancestral trauma, about maternal mortality within our communities, and in a very avant-garde way. And so it sort of began with the creator Terrence Nance, who sort of brought these really amazing filmmakers from Brooklyn, Nuatama Bodomo, Shaka King, Mariama Diallo, Jamin Washington, Nelson Mandela. Like, so many people, I might be missing some names. But yeah, we just all were writers and directors, and sort of thinking about television in a very no holds bars, no boundaries kind of way, and what is it that society needs to see right now in order to shift consciousness and for us to just be open-hearted and thinking about how we want to see ourselves also on television, and whether that means having a conversation about what it means to be Afro-Dominican and talking about machismo and how that manifests in your grandmother's kitchen to doing some archival footage. So it's just sort of like a wonderful,
art.
beautiful mess.
It's an art, yeah.
Which
very
America
artistic and beautiful.
Yes, so that's how it came about, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here and sit with all of you.
Said,
really, truly.
Said and I go way back, y'all. So, Said, talk to me about, not only is Vida a really beautiful show that takes place in Boyle Heights, tell them a little bit about it for those that don't know about this beautiful show, but you get to play a non-binary character in the show, so talk about that as well.
Well, Vida it centers around the two sisters, and they are from Boyle Heights, and estranged from each other, and the mother unexpectedly dies, and so they have to come back to their hometown to deal with it, but that means facing their past, reasons why they left, and also finding out the mother's secrets as that happens, when someone passes. And one of them is that she was married to me, and they had no idea. And so then this really sends them, in this, it's like a curveball thrown at them in a way. And so what do they have to do to, what that does for them? For many reasons, one of them is queer, and then the other one is it's surprisingly loving towards the Eddie character that I play. But then there's also gentrification. That's also another character in a way, as Los Angeles is also a character in the show. And we get to see how that affects the neighborhood that they come back to, which is presently, fighting that situation. And then there's characters like the activist character that is wonderful, who's La Pinche Chinche, and then she's badass. And I know so many mujeres like her, so I'm proud to be in a show with a Pinche Chinche. And the developer, Nelson, so that he plays a role in the show of wanting to purchase a property that we're all sharing. And the big question overall is, what are they going to do with this inheritance? Are they going to continue with their mother's legacy, or say, F it, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to just do my thing, So that's what the show's about, in a way, yeah.
And what I think is so incredibly moving and should be noted is that I've been doing this a long time, you've been doing this a long time. The fact that we're talking about 4 different shows that are Latinx led in this moment in time is so enormous. Even, yeah, let's clap. Because it really is coming up when I was pitched, and also I really love, like One Day at a Time came about because Norman Lear is a legend, and I really needed him to be my advocate, to say you should listen to this woman and we should do this Cuban American story based on her family. And I had that, so I had this existing IP, which people talk about existing IP. Why do things get remade all the time? Because it's really hard to sell original content. So when you hear about Gentify, like all of these shows are original content, are new shows that are all happening right now, that if you're not watching, I'd really encourage you guys to check out because they're very Latin American. They're American Latinos.
Yes.
You know, these are like, this is New York, this is LA, this is like, we are trying to tell this great diaspora of this umbrella of Latinidad. So off of that, what were the issues that you faced in making the shows, in trying to get them sold and pitching them, in note sessions? Like, what has that been like for each of you? What have been the difficulties and what have been the wins?
Boy, I wish I could, well, no, I don't wish, but we had, maybe it's a rarefied experience, I don't know, but we had incredible partnership with Netflix. They honored the work, they honored the voice, they honored the, you know, if there was ever a conversation about would or would this not happen, they did not try to put an imprint on it because they felt like it was the right thing to do. And so it was, you know, respecting the creative team. And, you know, I'm an ally. It's not my experience. But what I am here to do is to protect that voice and to say, you lived it, this comes from your experience, your family, and from your community. I lean on you to tell the story the way you see fit. And so in our world and in this creative process, it really has been true partnership. And what I'm inspired about, because I know we'll talk a lot about challenges, what I'm inspired about is that more executives, more networks and platforms, and wherever content is living, however it's living, people are starting to accept it for exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. And I think we all need to be advocates for one another. We're also excited because we've never all been in the same room together, and so I'm sure you'll see us doing some kind of show together, but I think we all need advocates and allies to make sure that those voices are heard. And so, as in terms of Gentified, you know, there may have been a couple of conversations about, well, how much is in English and how much is in Spanish? You know, well, it will be what it is meant to be within the context of this world. And so that was the end of that conversation.
I love that.
And so it was really about embracing the authentic narrative of what our particular world is.
And I think that's so important that we have allies that do that. I remember there was a whole conversation that we had with Netflix, who was also incredibly supportive of One Day at a Time while we were there. And they speak Spanish on the show, or Spanglish, which is what I spoke with my abuela. You know, she'd speak to me in Spanish, I'd answer in English, or tú sabes, a little bit of it, you know, that whole thing. And they said, well, we should translate all the Spanish. We should translate it. And I said, no, we shouldn't translate it. Because if I'm pitching it in the room and the Latinos are laughing and the white guys are laughing, then it's universal. And growing up, I had to look up bar mitzvah. I had to look up, you know, like, I didn't know that stuff. I looked it up in the encyclopedia. So it's really exciting and it seems across the board, people really love it. They have told me like they do, and I think the same is true with your shows that are both in Spanish and in English, Spanglish. And so what was the journey in terms of notes or any issues that came along the way?
Well, I think it's sort of that trust in trusting your audience to understand. They don't have to understand everything to lean in and participate in sort of the crafting of the vision. Because I think that's what filmmaking and television, that's when it's best, when it's not like treating you like a fool that needs to be informed of every single thing. That's not what's universal. What's universal is heartbreak, is love, is, struggling together to dream up another vision. So, the creator, Terrence Nance, he was very trusting in all of our individual experiences, and mine as Puerto Rican, African American who grew up in a Haitian neighborhood of Flatbush, Brooklyn, that has a certain, yes, Flatbush, yes, Puerto Rico, yes. But just sort of, trusting that I know what I'm talking about, and that people can switch to Spanish to English, and that, of course I would say this in an interaction with my abuela when I'm talking about, my cousin and how their toxic masculinity looks a certain type of way. But just sort of getting into the nitty-gritty of how we tell our stories and not having to over-explain ourselves. And so in terms of notes process, we were kind of told very early on in that stage, just write, don't think about how it needs to be produced, don't think about the limitations, just think about what the world needs to see in order to shift. And I think that was super important. And I thank HBO 100% for also, letting us have that creative control and working things out and trusting our operation to make something like Random Acts of Flyness, which I don't think, I think it kind of birthed a lot of other, kind of gave other people permission to sort of push the boundaries of what television can be and what stories are worth telling. And so that was sort of the process, just trust.
That's amazing.
Similar in Vida, I mean, when Tanya, wrote it, created it, and we read it, and we saw it, and that was when it really hits you. And as an actor, you're always, hoping that you can be, authentically the representation of Latinx that the character is. And there was what it felt like to watch it and to see it without any translation to Spanish was I was on the edge of my seat, I'm here, I felt so present in the world today of defying, the whole thing of growing up, or also what we've experienced now of being told don't speak Spanish and these kinds of things. And it's in your face, and that's what the show's about as well. So I was oh my God, it's activism meets TV. And it was fantastic, and it kept happening, and it was the same thing. The production, the network stars said yes to what Tanya is this is what is the story, and this is what best serves the story, and that's what happens when you listen to the writers and the creators, the Latinx, the authentic lived experience.
I think it's interesting that all of these shows as well are not on network television. Mm-hmm. All of these are independent, either cable outlets or streaming services, which I think really speaks to the future, the hunger, and I think it's also really interesting when you're talking about who can tell the story. Mm. So what do these rooms look like? With something that we've talked about, what is the room? Well, let's start with Hentified. Hentified was, I know. So you can tell.
Writer's room?
Yeah.
Our two co-creators, Marvin Lemus and Linda Yvette Chavez. The rest of our room was all women of color, and one transgender. And I love that room. I mean, for me, it's always been my goal to elevate women in the industry. It's always been my goal to elevate voices who have not had the platform or the opportunity to share their stories, which brings me to rooms like this and rooms that I love to be in. And so we were very thoughtful about putting that room together because we wanted those experiences shared. Mm-hmm. And I believe that comes through in all of the characters.
I think so too.
And I think the onus, the responsibility is on all of us to make sure that those rooms are represented in that way, and that we fight to make sure that those rooms are represented in that way. And our writer's assistant, who is transgender, we gave the opportunity for her to co-write one of the episodes of our first season. And when our showrunner, Monica Mazur, came to us and said, I'd like to be able to share an episode, and we said, absolutely, yes, of course, which is kind of unheard of. It doesn't normally happen in a first season. And so all the executive producers said, absolutely, yes. and we got an absolute yes from Netflix. And she now is on a writing staff of a new show on Netflix.
Incredible.
And so it's those opportunities that we have to, I have the chills. So it's up to us to provide those opportunities.
Yes, agree.
And I'm thrilled to be able to do that.
Yeah, I really think that the allowance that Norman gave to me to hire how I wanted to hire, and it was the only time, because I've been, on mostly dominant culture shows on network, How I Met Your Mother and Rules of Engagement, and even Devious Maids, where I met Tanya. Tanya was the first time I'd ever worked with another Latina in my 12-year writing career before One Day at a Time. Yep. I had only ever been in rooms with men, with white men. Maybe there would be a white woman.
I know, right?
So it became really interesting, because when One Day at a Time even started, there would be times that I would say something and I'd get ready for the room to say, no, that's not how it is. That's not how we do it. I think I made some comment about sleepovers, and I was like, we don't do sleepovers. We don't do sleepovers. My mom is convinced everyone's trying to molest me. No.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't do sleepovers. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And then all of a sudden, when there's all these Latinos, they were like, oh no, Mom, my mom didn't let me do a sleepover either. No, my mom either. And it was so I felt so seen in my own writer's room,
true.
right? Because if not, you get shut down, and then you're like, okay, I guess. Mm-hmm. If you're the token, you get shut down. And so I imagine your show's so authentic. What is that room?
Yeah, I mean, the room was very diverse in terms of it was the diaspora, which includes, this Puerto Rican from New York. And so there was someone from Senegal, someone from Ghana, someone from up the block in Bed-Stuy, it was just, Terrence is from Dallas. It was very diverse, but it was also all Black, which was very different, but I think necessary for that show to exist. And in a way that, thinking about inclusion and what that meant in terms of Blackness, and that it also looks Dominican, it looks Caribbean and Spanish speaking. And I think that is really important, because those stories also need to be told. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been in a few different rooms. That's actually where I met Tanya, in the Brujas mini room. So not directing, but putting it out there in terms of energy.
I said it, so now I have to make it happen.
I know.
It can happen.
But yeah, and I mean, and that room was powerful as well, in terms of just people giving the chance to writers and directors who never were in a room before, but to give them voice. And the same thing about bumping someone up who was a assistant writer, that happened in our room as well. She started taking notes, and then halfway through she was on staff as a writer. And it's just sort of seeing talent and understanding that, and thinking that everyone has equal voice, even if it's not equal status, and being able to offer the opportunity to make that next leap quicker, versus you need 15-page of experience, and we all understand what that means in Hollywood sometimes. And so, just giving us that opportunity.
Yes.
And I've been actually very fortunate. I've actually never been in a room where I'm the only person, and I think that's the shift.
May it never happen to you.
May it never happen. But so.
That's right. I had the experience of being from the area that is being written about, and the show, and lived in Boyle Heights, contributed to a lot, and been experiencing, throughout the time. And so what happens also too in the writers' room was that there was wonderful, all Latinx writers' room, majority of them all were women. There was 2 men, cis men, and now we have a trans man as the assistant, but in the first season, it was also that we had a lot of people from Latinx from Texas. And who, right? Which is, I'm like, yeah, what's up? I got to know a lot of Texans, which is great. And but one of the things I realized, we use different slang, we use different words, right? So one of the things that for me, I was like, because they use the P word, which is the PUTO. And for me, as someone who's in the LGBTQIA community, I'm like, oh, Dios, It's enough I see it in soccer, you know what I mean? It's like, it hurts, it stabs, every time. But they're like, no, and over where we're from, that's not what it means. And it's like, it's something else that I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's not derogatory. So that was what we had, things we talked about. But because I am from the area and I grew up in Huntington Park as well and all that, like, there's certain things that I can bring to the table, right? The lived experience and be like, oh, there's, Tanya, and we're so open. She was so open to it. And of course, because I'm an actor though, as an actor, you do your job as an actor, you know what I mean? And the writers, they're crafting this and you trust. So there's this thing, but it's such a collaborative effort as an actor. So I was like, really? Like you want me to tell you if it feels like, or like, please let me know. And so that was great because then you really get to know what language we're using in different parts as well, learning about each other. And, there's this thing about being from the area and writing, from the area. I can only write the characters from the area. A lot of people do feel that way. I'm from here, but also as one of the things I find being from the community too is that sometimes people don't understand the process of TV and the process of being an actor. They don't really grasp the world. Not really being exposed to it, you know what I mean? And so that also lends to what I feel like some people may say, hey, I want the character to be just like me. Because we don't have that many stories out there, right. That happens where if it's not exactly like our experiences, then it doesn't matter. So there's that, sometimes the cancel culture that happens because of that, or the language used, or they're not Cuban, or if they're not, then F it, I don't even wanna. And that is one of the biggest challenges as an actor on the show, and another show, like defending other shows, like talking to audience members. Yes. And going like, but why does it matter, and these things, but let's talk about it. It does matter, right? So, but we can talk about it in terms of the industry as well, right? So there's that.
I think there is something about educating the community in terms of the struggle, like we're boots on the ground, like we are boots on the ground fighting the fight, going to, a dominant culture that for a long time has erased our existence. And, I was just talking to Terry backstage about, there's an activist, Fabiana Rodriguez, that I like to talk about, who, incredible activist and artist, you should look her up. And she does this talk about culture, which is what we make. We make culture. We share our experiences in the hopes that these stories will open hearts and minds. And she did a talk that talked about Will and Grace and Ellen coming out and how that led to marriage equality. And how roughly you can look at anything happening in our country and go back 10 years and see something in the culture that was happening that affected that. So I went home after seeing her talk and I thought about my parents who came here in 1962 and had a very different path to citizenship that many other Latinos have. They were welcomed to the country. They were given a path to citizenship. I got to go to school because they got loans. I lived in a beautiful house because they got loans. I got to be very well educated. They became citizens, and we have a success story. This is an American success story in one generation. And I looked, and 10 years earlier, the #1 show in America in 1952 was I Love Lucy. So you had a warm, funny, talented Cuban in your home, and it made it less scary when this thing was happening. And so you look at what's happening today, and what the narrative is. We are almost 20% of this country, and our narratives are still 3 to 5% of our faces are on television, and of those 3 to 5%, largely stereotyped roles. So the shift has to happen, and when it does, when we are out here making it, your support is everything. You watching, 1 in 4 Latinos goes opening weekend to see a movie. 1 in 4, and they're not making movies for us. So that shift is really, really important. Yeah. And so what are things that you have seen in shows, Ugly Betty, all of these shows, what is the culture shift that people come up and tell you, this meant something to me. I saw Ugly Betty and I was seen. You must have a million.
Yeah. It's always about representation. It's about being fearless about telling the stories the way they're meant to be told. We had not seen a Latin girl on television as a lead on broadcast television, in my experience, ever. And so it was an opportunity to share this beautiful story about a girl within a family unit that was able to bulldoze her way through life without fear. And so whether you were brown or black or white or Asian, everybody could relate to a story about a young girl who just wanted to have it all. She wanted to be a part of a world without having to surrender who she was. So be it an ugly duckling story, be it a Cinderella story, be it a fish out of water story. We wanted, while it was a very specific story told through this beautiful girl who was going to bloom in her own way, that because we were on network television, you have a responsibility to speak to a broader audience. But I really feel proud that we did it in a way that we did not compromise that character.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to remember that we cannot compromise who these characters are that we live and breathe and fight for every single day. And I was thinking as we were talking earlier, there's a lot of us that are out there fighting to make sure that these voices are out there and have the opportunities, but it's the buyer, it's the end user, it's the network, it's the streaming platform, it is wherever these voices need to live. People have to give everybody a shot because it's worth it. We have 2 writers that had not written television before, and we surrounded them by those of us who had had more experience, and we all learned together along the way. Thank God their voices are going to be out there. Netflix took a chance, we all believed in them, and it just goes for everyone up here, anyone out here who's creating content. We have to just keep fighting, and we have to keep breaking down those doors. Mm-hmm. And the more we do that, I hope the less we're going to have these conversations.
I think so too, yeah.
During Vida, I would say to audiences that, watching, or that would, watch it through the app, or that was how a lot of people could afford it, being that we were a cable show, that your vote, like every view is your vote, and that your vote, it matters. And that's how, and what happens is that people will do it where they do it like the underground way, and that doesn't really count. So that's one of the biggest challenges. I know, I want to be also positive too, but it's also a good thing too. You look at it like, what can we do? This is an opportunity. Yeah. But it's one of those things. But it's like, especially with the timing when it comes to those kinds of shows that on the opening weekend, just like the films, like premiere weekend of the show, that's what they measure. And the networks, they don't tell us the numbers, or they don't have to tell us the numbers. So we don't know, and we're just like, well, you can only do is push. But sometimes what I've heard is that the Latinx audience doesn't like to be told what to do. So then, in marketing.
They love to tell us what they love and don't love.
I love to tell us what to do. No, I'm just kidding. I know I like to tell what to do.
It's true. Well, I think also just I wish we could just talk to each of you, because I want to hear from the audience. But something that also, when we're talking about these shows, is that, at least for me, I felt like coming up, there was a sense, when you're the only one in the room especially, there's a sense that, like, do I belong here? Imposter syndrome. Having to pave a way, because if you don't do well, they're not going to hire any more people of color after you. Right. There's an intense pressure to succeed and to do well. And then you break down, and finally you have a shot, and you do it. Tanya and I talk about this a lot, because Tanya, who runs Vida, is one of my closest friends. And we make the shows, they're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That means that the critics love them. Yeah. And still no money is put behind the marketing of the shows, not enough to make a dent so that our community knows we exist. And then the weekend, One Day at a Time was canceled, for example. We were canceled because of low viewership. And that same weekend, Big Little Lies, a show I love, came out and was a hit for HBO. We have 9 times the viewership of Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
But the story, right, the narrative is what's important. So the more there are people, reporters, executives, that are Latinx or allies of Latinx stories that can say, wait a minute, we are sending the wrong message. We are sending a message, and we have to be, they're now creators that are doing the work, that have put in the time and are doing the work. How can we position them so that the dominant culture is aware that they exist? Right. Because that's where the real shift happens.
That's true, yeah.
So going back to moments that you saw culture shift or change with people in your shows, what was a moment that either of you had where you were talking to a fan or you were talking to someone and they felt?
I mean, for me, it was someone showed me a tweet of a little girl. She's like 4 years old. And she was just sort of singing the hook from Nunca Land. And Nunca Land is basically kind of a reimagining of Peter Pan, but in like a Dominican house in Flatbush. And there's a part at the end where she's just sort of demanding that Peter Pan grows up, and it's like, your father's 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 father's, and it trails off about like, grow up and sort of take accountability for this mess that we've made, and let's clean it up together. And so she was singing it, this like little girl singing about like fighting the patriarchy, and it was just like tears, because that's what it's about. Like she's hooked by like the melody of it, but the melody isn't about like taking off your clothes or it's not about essentializing a woman. It's about moving beyond and owning that and asking for your needs to be met. And she's like, she doesn't know that, but she's going to, and it's like embedded in her memory. And so I think that is shifting one little person at a time, and I think that's what media is about. And so that was just one moment.
Beautiful. I love that. Sid?
Whew, there's so much. Definitely when so many people on Instagram reach out and talk about how their identity, now that they could come out and say that they're non-binary or however they identify, that sometimes, gender identity is met with a lot of like, sometimes just, like this, like a wall, I guess. Like it's just really hard when it comes to gender and within all our communities, I feel like across the board, transgender people are being stripped of their rights. They can't even be in the military. As a non-binary person, that's something that's huge. Transmasculine and people saying that they could be themselves when they watch the show, when they see my representation on the screen, is like, because if you can change someone to say, or it could happen for them where they say, I'm gonna be who I am, that is a process of allowing someone not to suffer. And that's something that we need to do, that's what it does, the television and the arts as well. It touches you, connects you, and you have a cathartic experience. And so for them, it would be something that is life-changing. That's how there's a disparity, yes. And finally you see it and you're like, this is it here. Okay, I'm gonna keep flying, and then they can be who they are, and change other people and heal, and do all these things that they want to do. So that's been incredible, and seeing the critics, like really the critics, like all kinds. We have also so many journalists and reviewers that are Latinx that came out. Season 1 on that are like reviewing the show, that is record number, which is huge for us to review our own work. But then you have the white dudes. You're like, oh no, what are they gonna say? And everyone's like, this is great. I'm like, this is weird.
I know,
when it happens,
when you make it and they like it, it is like, oh my God, it's being seen. It's really being seen. And I think, like you were saying earlier, there is such a starvation for representation, that it does put, going back to that pressure of being one of the firsts, right? Is that when you do put something out there, if it's not every single thing that you are seeing or feeling or thinking because you so want it to be, I think it speaks to the audience's deep desire to be seen, that when it's not exactly them, there's a pain, there's a hurt.
Yes. Right.
that is, I think that sometimes gets pointed in this direction even though we're trying to fix the problem. And I think really the solution to that, and I would love to hear from you guys, is more shows.
More shows.
That's right, is more shows.
Giving more people that opportunity to have their voices
more
heard.
people to have opportunity and to become, I think one of the joys of being canceled by Netflix and then picked up by Pop is that when we were canceled, we lost our writers. And we had a group of so many writers that were brand new. Like you were saying, some of them were former students of mine at Loyola.
Wow.
Michelle Badillo was a former student. Whoa. Yeah, I met her, she was 19. So the beauty is our writers, our Latino writers were snapped up immediately and gone on to Fox animated series and a new, The Connors, and like they are now in the system because they were excellent. Not because they were Latinos, but because they were amazing and just given an opportunity. And so it's...
I want to cry right now.
But
that's what happened.
It is really like that's where the change happens, and that's where hopefully more of these types of shows can exist. So we're running out of time. I want to hear what's next. What's next for everybody? That you can talk about, right? Everything's so secret because, jinx it.
It's that time of year. I will say what's next is just more of the same. It's really, like I said when we first started this conversation, it's critically important to me that there is representation on television, and I'm going to continue to fight for that representation. I've been in the business for 16 years. I've clawed down a lot of doors, and I know that it's part of my purpose. I just said to you earlier, I need a DNA test because the Latin voice is incredibly important to me. The persons of color voice is very important to me. The you name it gender voice is important to me because that's what the world is. Mm-hmm. It's how we live. It's how we need to see each other. Even back when we were doing The Office, that's what a workplace looks like.
Right.
And so we as content creators must represent those worlds in those ways. And I don't know about anybody else's world, but my world is brown, and it's white, and it's black, and it's yellow, and it's how we need to continue to fight. I'm not afraid to walk into a network and say, if it's not done this way, then we're not doing it here. And so we have to continue to raise those voices to say, this is the voice, this is how we need it to be represented. We'll find a home. And so for me, it's more of that.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, same, more of the same. There's a season 2 of Random Acts of Flyness that we have to get to soon. And I just came off of a pilot that I directed called How to Make Love to a Black Woman for Showtime, so I'm putting it out there. That it gets ordered. It was my first pilot.
First pilot,
which is a huge deal, and very soon. People said skipping the steps, but I think that just shows you like when you're offered an opportunity and you come from where I come from, anything is possible. And also, I want to make a feature film, and my world looks like Afro-Puerto Rican and looks Haitian, it looks Dominican, and to me it's just like an obvious default. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like really excited to make this thing about a young dancer who has to sort of go to this audition and figure out, if her life is really going to change after it. It's the whole thing. But yes, we should talk. We're going to talk after this. I just really want to make really powerful stories that allow people to think about what it is that I want to see in myself next and in society and make a difference that way.
I love it. Awesome.
Well, we're going to start shooting season 3 of Vida very soon. I'm very excited about that. It's going to come out next year around the same time as season 2. And I, as an actor, I'm looking for also auditioning. So that's what I do as an actor. And then as a writer, if you all look around this room and see if you see anybody else who looks like me at your table, if you see somebody that looks like me or that, go up to them, say hello, introduce yourself. I'm they, them, theirs. Those are my pronouns. I don't go by she or her. That's some way that I hope that we can, that's what we need is what I feel from all of us here and outside too, to really talk to each other. I feel like, because a lot of times, to get work as an actor, what other non-binary Latinx actor do you have doing major roles? That would be me. So if you could point to somebody, it'd be like, but that's me. So thank you, but then it's like, well, percentage-wise, how much work do I have out there? So then I'm writing. I have a short film and sketch comedy, and I'm taking writing classes too, and like I'm just constantly creating. I was working as a solo performer for so long, and I know we've talked so much about the theater and how it really helped us, and it really serves us today, and I'm so grateful for the theater. And I'm like, I'll go back to it, because when you don't have work somewhere, you create and you make it happen, and then you see where it's at. Stand-up comedy, like I've got to perform. If I'm not like performing, then I start to feel antsy. So it's been like, oh my God, I'm naturally a performer. So I just like do open mics and writing jokes every day. So that's what I've been doing, and waiting for the scripts, and auditioning for other roles. And that's what you got to do, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm so excited.
I love it. I love
grateful,
it.
yeah.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Check out the stuff. I have One Day at a Time. We are shooting in January. It is free to come to a taping. So it is on my Twitter. If anyone would like to come to a taping, please come. It's so much fun to come and see a live taping. Everyone should see Rita Moreno live. Oh my God, It's remarkable. She'll always sing. And I have a new ABC show that I'm directing and acting and starring and writing, which is called United We Fall with Christina Vidal, that is starting in the new year. Christina Vidal and Will Sasso. And I directed Mr. Iglesias and have a feature coming out. So we're doing it, you guys. Yes. We're doing it. We're doing it. And when we do it, please come out and support it. We need you. We need your tweets. We really, I mean, it's that is what saved One Day at a Time, was the love of the Latinx and LGBTQ community that really made their voices loud on social media. So if you want to see more stories about you, then talk about it and insist upon it. Thank you so much.
And if it's like a big blockbuster, you're like, oh, that's a big, HBO or Stars, they're so huge. No, that means we need you so we can keep having more, and not just one representation.
That's right.
Thank you, Gloria.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We did it right to time. Right to time.
Great.
Please welcome accomplished poet, TV writer, and producer Lemon Anderson.
Here we are, gathered in this technicolor cipher of clay skin and shaded Anglo barrio blues, decked to the nine in our parents' best wishes, raised by the tropic deserts of our ancestors, the grandchildren of La Factorias, all gathered here, chasing the brown oneness of our dreams. The promise of our devoted labor to this land, the unsung choir behind the star-spanglish banner. If only they can see us beyond the borders as Americanos, on the silver screens, the way we see ourselves in anamorphic frame, sitting on the porches with our long basketball shorts and cowboy boots, Operation Bootstrap kids, scripting away, dodging drafts, penning away the stories of our Borinquen years. Written in between the factory lines of our imagination, if only they can pull the trap music away from our rhymes, hear the rhythm of our young poets escaping their empty bellies into the nights like our parents once did, to Latin jazz, to bebop, when the riots were burning down the streets of Halo City, escaping the fields on a high hill under the ashes, finding love under a sycamore tree, like Flores de la Flamboyant. If only they can see we carry these American stories too, that behind the lens of a vintage 16mm camera, a child from Humboldt Park whose English, broken like a shattered mirror, can only see the world that way, in scattered pictures. If only they can hear the loud gossip of a hot comb till the mill of a young morenita's hair, because no matter how much she can't understand a word these women are saying, she only trusts her African roots in the hands of a Dominican doña. Dímelo de lo mío. If only Tinseltown can keep their ears to the streets of the South, they will hear how we paved those country roads, how we hung out and were hanged by the side of them too. While the goat suckers watched on, if you pull back the lens even further, you will pan to a wide shot of 5 desperados, Las Gorras Blancas, taking back their land. Flash forward to the land they lost, where a prison now sits in privacy. Closed in on a guard named Ramirez, who sits behind a desk playing cards against a man who looks just like him. Sitting behind a cage, also made by a man who looks just like him. All swept up by the high price of freedom songs, and still in unison, the only tune these men can whistle together is Dixie. This is the brown oneness of our dreams, to be able to tell our stories by our own storytellers for our story's sake, because it's not enough to see us in the back of the kitchens, you gotta smell that food too, Papa. Capture the tattered limbs stirring the pot. See us fall in love behind the front line. Raise our spirits to Anakaona. Shake the ground with our religious convictions as the priest crosses herself. Climb our way up the corporate ladder. Native flag tucked deep in our breast pocket. Pride on our sleeves, because we too are an officer and a gentleman. We too boarded Amistad. We too are the Battle of Algiers and Hamlet. We too are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Et Chavo y Canchifle. Raúl Julia, Iri Chacón, Cheech and Rita, Rodriguez y Cuarón. We too are the threaded tailors of our own campfires, crooning through the night, cutting and sewing away, frame by frame, into the stories, our stories of Los Americanos are zooted and suited and tightened by the seams. But we too are the fabric of this nation, the brown oneness of our dreams.
Please welcome co-writers and co-directors of Sundance winner documentary, The Infiltrators, Cristina Ibarra and Alex Rivera.
Hi there. It's really great to be here with you all. I'm from Texas, so with y'all. Yeah, so we love talking to people who are really thinking about ways of pushing our community forward, and that's what we see here today. So it's really great to be here. Personally, myself, I've been working as an independent filmmaker for about 18 years. And coming from the Texas border has really been impactful for my work. I have family that straddles two sides, and that's really been how when I think about how and why I make work, that really informs my work. I'm standing here with my partner in life and sometimes in work. Yeah, we're a border crossing filmmaking family.
Yeah, and so let's see if the clicker is clicking-ish. Oops. There we go. Yeah, so hey, it's great to be here. I'm Alex Rivera, filmmaker and media artist. I've also been working on kind of border transgressing films and videos for almost 20 years now, but always trying to find an innovative kind of language. So I've worked in music video, science fiction, animation, documentary, but always looking at different aspects of the Latino experience and what I would think of kind of as a mental borderlands.
So we produced our new film, The Infiltrators, together. Mm-hmm. This film is what we call a hybrid because it combines documentary with scripted scenes to tell an incredible, true story. The film has not been released yet, but we're going to show you a non-official trailer.
Inside 200 detention centers, almost 40,000 immigrants are locked up. They don't get a court-appointed lawyer. They don't even get a sentence. They just get warehoused. There's been cases of abuse and even mysterious death. Well, tonight, I have one question. Hi? How can I get in?
You're going to be transported to a detention facility.
We're all young illegals. Our mission, stop the deportations. Our strategy, get into the detention center and get people out.
There's a woman's side to this detention center. I called my mom and my dad and I said, this is what I'm about to do. They were scared for their daughter.
Call this number, but...
Comunicar un cuchillo re filoso.
We can pass out a lot more phone numbers now.
Vamos a tratar de terminar 600 antes de la muerte.
You're coming with us, asshole. I don't know what you're up to, but from now on, things are gonna be very different.
Her husband was beating her, and she finally went to the cops to turn him in. Like, she thought she was doing the right thing, and then they detained her.
They're deporting Benny. His flight leaves tonight.
I have somebody that's being deported in a couple hours. His life is in danger. Let's get them to release him.
Why were you willing to be arrested and deported to find out what was happening inside this jail?
I can't sit and hope, I can't just sit and pray that I can find a love when all I see is pain.
I'm not leaving.
Not leaving.
I can't just breathe, baby, breathe. I can't just breathe, baby, breathe.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you. Right on. Thank you. You guys are that's not the official trailer yet. It's a work in progress. You're the first to see it, so thank you for that. So the film started for us about 7 years ago, actually. Back then, we saw on the news something we'd never seen before, which is young undocumented immigrants getting arrested and risking deportation as part of an act of political empowerment and political protest. And it was fascinating and disturbing and scary in some senses for us. We wanted to understand what was happening, and so we started to film with them, and we thought we were going to make a short film about one of those actions. But as we were filming, the group kept going and taking more and more radical steps, more dramatic risks, and so we sort of stopped editing and just started to follow and sort of got ready for a long journey. And then in the summer of 2012, the group of undocumented youth decided to embark on this kind of incredible heist. They decided to infiltrate this detention center, get themselves detained on purpose to go in to help get people out. And watching them pull off this heist, it felt like watching something. It was almost like the Ocean's 11. It was this like complicated plan, get in, defeat the system, get out, and but it was real, and it was heavy, and it was happening right in front of our cameras.
So the mission that they had was to rescue Claudio Rojas. He's a father from Argentina who is being held in this detention center in violation of Obama administration guidelines. So what the activists wanted to do is they wanted to go in, they wanted to get him out, get themselves out, and expose what was happening inside the detention center. And maybe even, if they were bold enough, to shut the whole place down.
Mm-hmm. Well, but once we identified that this was the story we wanted to tell, we had been there with our documentary cameras, but we realized that we had a really big problem, which is that half of the story took place inside of this building, inside of this detention center, and our cameras could not go in there. So these are images of the real detention center in Broward County, Florida. It's known as the crown jewel of the detention center. It's painted pink. There are TVs in every room. But nonetheless, there was no way for our cameras to go in with the infiltrators. All of these detention centers that you're hearing about in the news have very, very strict policies, that have kept out journalists and kept out cameras. And so we found ourselves making a documentary in which half the story was something we couldn't see. And so we had to kind of invent a solution, and we came up with this kind of hybrid language, documentary outside of the detention system, but once our characters went in, we turned them into actors. And so we did scripted scenes on the inside.
Yeah, and so, to finance this kind of border-crossing film, we had to cross other kinds of borders in the financing world. We kind of had to break the mold that was existing out there for us already. And we did that by turning to traditional documentary forms of funding, like grants from Sundance, Tribeca, and along with others like Ford, and I can't list them all. But then what we had to do after that is we then had to turn to equity for the scripted production, like many other feature films do. So we had a combination of both. So we worked for nearly 7 years on this project. We ended up premiering at the Sundance Film Festival in January of earlier this year. Man, believe me, we were nervous as hell. I mean, this, we felt like we were presenting this experiment, and we didn't know what to expect. So after the film, the lights go on, the credits roll, we see that there's a standing ovation. We ended up winning both of the audience award and the jury award in our category. So after Sundance, the story just ended up getting more complicated.
Yeah. And so since the time of the infiltration, again, that happened under Obama, it was 2012. So since then, Claudio Rojas, the father from Argentina who we'd mentioned earlier, he's been free and living in Florida and working as a gardener. Since 2012, once a year, he's been going in for his yearly check-ins with ICE. And so typically he walks into the office and they confirm he's not committed a crime and give him more time to stay in the country and work out his immigration status. But in February of this year, after the film premiered and after he was in the news, he went in for his routine ICE check-in and they detained him again. Now under Trump, this ICE under Trump. And so everything spun around for us and we ended up working on this campaign with the activists featured in the film, almost reliving the film, trying to get him out. Working also with leaders from the film community to try to free him. We organized about 700 members of the film community. Ava DuVernay and John Leguizamo signed a public letter condemning what appeared to be retaliation against the subject in our film. A Democratic congressman from Florida submitted a bill to Congress naming him and trying to give him some legal status to get him out.
So we're also working with the ACLU. They were representing us. We sued ICE in federal court, trying to stop his deportation. And our case asserts that if ICE is going to deport immigrants who appear in a documentary, then how can we really have a free conversation about immigration? It's a First Amendment case. But despite all of our efforts, Claudio was eventually deported after 20 years of living here in this country and working here. We don't know exactly why he was deported right now, but all of the facts are pointing towards this being retaliation for speaking out through this film.
Yeah, but it's not over yet, both for our film and obviously for Claudio. Claudio is now in Argentina with his extended family, but he really wants, obviously, to come back and be with his family here, his wife, his kids, and his new grandson. The film is on tour, and it's touring the world in film festivals. The story is being adapted as a TV series. The production company Blumhouse is leading that project. You might know Blumhouse from films like Jordan Peele's Get Out and Paranormal Activity. And we were really happy when they reached out because they've got a lot of experience with psychological horror, and it makes them well suited to deal with immigration under Trump. So anyways.
We're also working with a film distributor, Oscilloscope. We're partnering with them to bring the film to theaters, and it'll probably be out there in the winter. And so we want to invite you to join us, for this next phase of the story. We want to build a national campaign alongside the release of the film, so we can use that film for Claudio's campaign to bring him back. It'll be focused on him. We also think that this film is a way of starting a national conversation about what can be done to reunify families like Claudio's that have been torn apart under this administration.
Yeah, and so we're interested in trying to move the conversation beyond, in terms of the next election, maybe stopping some of the deportations or slowing them down, which is often what the conversation is about. We want to talk about reunifying families that have been broken apart under Trump. And so our campaign will be targeting the 2020 Democratic field and trying to get those candidates to make a simple statement that what happened here was unjust. And so that if one of them wins, which I'm praying, I go for Quetzalcoatl, but I'm just going to the powerful forces here. But so long, if one of them wins, that the next president could hopefully bring Claudio back. Yeah.
So by telling this story of the infiltration at the Broward Detention Center, we were hoping to do a few things. We wanted to tell this story so that history knows it. So it's important that people in the future, that they know that these undocumented youth, many of them Latinos, were really taking charge. You know, they were leaders, and they took immense risks. We also wanted to push film form itself forward a little bit, or to a new place at least. You know, we wanted to experiment. And we wanted to use art to expose this system that wants to stay invisible. So meeting the real life infiltrators, you know, they reminded me that we don't always have to accept things the way that they are. So it is time to create change. We may just be starting the journey, but we want to invite you to join us here at the infiltrators.com.
Infiltratorsfilm.com.
Oh, yeah.
You can find us there. You can find us here. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. Thanks for having us. Thank you. Thank you.
Here to talk about her latest projects with filmmaker and co-founder of El Cine, a non-profit organization promoting Latinx culture through special event screenings. Please welcome Riverdale star Camila Mendez and Mariana da Silva.
Shall we sit right next to each other?
Yeah, right.
Let's do it.
Let's sit next to each other. Hello. Hi, everyone. Camila.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are so honored to have an actor of your caliber here at the LATINXT space. Most of you know Camila as Veronica Lodge in Riverdale, as New York City's rich girl turned small town speakeasy owner. You were plucked right out of NYU.
Yes.
Acting program. So tell us a little bit about that. How was it going from NYU to school? Did you feel very prepared?
I felt prepared to an extent. I mean, I'd hope after 4 years of studying theater that I'd be somewhat prepared. But I never thought it would happen as quickly and as grandly as it did. I thought it would be like, okay, I'm gonna get like a featured role in Law & Order, and then I'm just gonna like keep working my way up until the right thing comes. But I got really lucky, and I booked something that really like threw me out there, and I just had to sink or swim.
Yeah. Did you feel nervous for that, or were you sure that you were ready, or you thought, I'm ready for this, or?
It was like somewhere in between. I mean, it's not like I didn't feel like I could do it, but I had no idea what to expect. Because college, really, most of what they teach you is just more about the craft than about the actual, you know, industry of it all and everything that goes into it. So there was a lot of stuff that I had to learn just through experience, but college definitely prepared me for like the work ethic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the one question I always like to discuss in our Q&As is, what does inclusion mean to you?
I think inclusion means keeping an open mind, never really putting a wall up to a community of people. But also I think you can be a little bit more active in inclusion. It doesn't just have to be like being open-minded in the way that you consider people for roles. I think inclusion can be actively looking for opportunities to include different communities, you know?
Yeah.
Which is something I've definitely been thinking about more and more. I think when I started out, I was just like, I want to act. That's all I want to do. Like, I just want to act. I don't know if I have a voice. I don't know what I want to say. I really just have known that I've wanted to act my whole life. And then I got to this point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this platform now. I have young women and men who look up to me, and now I have this responsibility to my community, to whatever it is that I represent. And I need to take advantage of that because there's too much power there, too much opportunity there to ignore. So then lately I've definitely started to think about inclusion more and like what I can do to play a role in that, you know? Maybe producing my own stuff one day, and playing a more active role in like creating not just job opportunities for myself, but for my peers and for people around me, wherever there's lacking representation.
You're Brazilian. We're
Yes,
both Brazilian.
we're both Brazilians
We
from
found
Miami.
out. How many Brazilians are here? Do we have any Brazilians?
I don't think so.
Holy cow.
This is what I'm saying, man.
That's what we're
There's two of
talking
us.
about.
This massive country in South America, and yet not a single Brazilian here.
Who were you exposed to first,
Huh?
like as an actor from Brazil? Was there somebody who you looked at and thought, I could do this? Was it Sonia Braga?
Sonia Braga is definitely, and Alice Braga too.
Yeah.
Alice Braga is the one who's in, have you seen The Second Mother?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
Brilliant.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she's also in City of God, which is...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Brilliant.
I forgot about that. But yeah, I don't know. I think I definitely watched novellas with my mom growing up and stuff, but I never really knew their names or anything. Not to the point where I could give you an answer right now. But I know that I don't know that many, because there aren't that many in America working and you know, at least making a name for themselves. Like, I know there's Morena Baccarin, she's Brazilian. Kaya Scodelario is half Brazilian.
Yeah. You.
There's me.
Tell me a little bit about what the experience of Riverdale has been like for you.
What do you want to know?
Well, just about like what you said as far as being a Latina coming onto the show. You had found out, how did that audition come about? You had found out they were making the character Latina, but you initially didn't think they were, correct?
No, because when I first heard they were making like a rendition of the Archie comics into like a sexy, dark CW show, I was like, okay, there's Veronica, but you know, they're definitely gonna go with like a white girl, pinup looking, you know, that vintage look. Like there's no chance of me getting this. So I kind of didn't really think about it. And then I ran into a mutual friend of ours at an audition, and she's like, I'm going out for Riverdale tomorrow. I'm like, for who? She's like, Veronica. I'm like, they're making Veronica Latina? And she's like, yeah, girl. And I called my agent right after that, and I was, I think, one of the last people they saw. And then 2 days later, I was testing or meeting with the producers, and one thing led to another.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Thank you. I will say something, because I was auditioning for like a year before I got any bites, any callbacks or whatever. It was like a little bit of an adjustment period, like, okay, this whole auditioning process, what is it? And something I ran into a lot, especially being in New York. I went out for a lot of, like I'm always going out for Latina roles, right? But I was in this weird in-between where I wasn't their definition of Latina. I wasn't urban enough, I got that a lot. And I wasn't white enough to play the Caucasian roles, so I was always in this ethnically ambiguous in-between. And so it really felt like, okay, there's no roles out there for me. You know, I don't feel like whenever they are asking for ethnic, they're asking for someone who is so obviously that they'll be able to cover their ass.
Right. It's
you know what I mean?
Just in front of the screen, so it's how it looks more so than
like the culture and the ethnicity and whatever you bring as your experience, you know? So I felt like finally when Riverdale came along, it was like, okay, they're looking for a Latina, but they're not necessarily specifying what that means. It's just kind of like, no, this is where she's from, this is her ethnicity, and that's it. Like we don't need to get into it any more than that. Not that that's necessarily an issue, but I just felt like my in-betweenness was finally accepted with this character.
Well, that's the thing I always think, the biggest feeling of being Latinx in media is that, or just in general, is when you go home, you've been in America so long that you're Americanized. And then you're here and you're not American.
Exactly.
So you're Latin and you're kind of in this place of feeling as though you don't fit
Totally.
ever.
And I think that goes for a lot of first generation anything.
Yeah.
You know, and because I have first generation Asians who feel a very similar thing. You know, like they go back to Korea and they're very American, and then here they're very Korean. And I think that's a universal thing. But there's something about the Latin community right now where we haven't really teamed up together yet to really like make a movement out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we're starting to look at this, right?
This is definitely an opportunity.
So you have a film, Coyote Lake, coming out. This is a little bit of a different role for you. Oh, it did come out.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about that. So you worked with Ariana Barraza.
I did.
And it was a different role than Veronica. How did you feel relating to this?
I was playing this like really sheltered girl who lives on a farm, who is a murderer, but had grown up as a murderer and didn't really, just thought of that as life. Her mother, for a living, would drug people and drown them, specifically coyotes, and then kind of brought her daughter into it. So she's this 17-year-old girl who acts like she's 12 and is very sheltered. So I got to play a very different type of girl, wears boy clothes and no makeup, you know, always has a little rosary on. Like she's just a very different character from Veronica. So it was nice. It was really fun.
And then you just wrapped a Netflix original, Windfall, which is also a thriller.
Yes.
And what about, now you're going into these more adult roles.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Is that something new for you? Are you
it's exciting because, you know, I feel like as you progress in your career, you always want to be progressing in different ways. So yeah, I mean, I can't play a teenager forever.
Yeah.
So it's nice to play characters that are closer to my age. But I also like the fact that I can exist in a range of ages, you know?
Yeah.
I think there can be good characters written at any age, any time.
Yeah.
Which is why I love acting so much. It's timeless.
And exploring it.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
You are wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This has been a really fun talk. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. This one?
Hello? Hi, sorry, I was still getting mic'd. Welcome, thank you so much for sticking around for this panel. I promise you it'll be action-filled and hilarious and maybe horrifying. That is our genre panel. Why don't I bring out the panelists one by one. Ben Hernandez-Bray, representing action and superhero TV film director. Come on out. Give it up. Cesar Mazariegos is a TV writer, representing also superhero and comedy. We didn't go over this, it's fine. And Andres and Diego Meza Valdez, the Meza Valdez brothers, representing horror. And we have an actor joining us as well, Jorge Diaz. Also also representing comedy and animation, right?
What was that?
You also animation.
Yes, and animation.
Yeah, you do voice acting, yeah, cool. So why don't we go down the line and tell us a little bit quickly, and this kind of like, let's do a speed round of all the exciting things that you're working on and where you're from.
Oh, okay, here we go. Born and raised in Los Angeles. Is the mic on?
Oh, your mic.
Uh-oh, it's not working.
Yeah, pull up your V-neck.
Gotta pull up the shirt there a little bit.
There you go.
Hopefully that works.
I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised in San Fernando Valley. That's right, there's a couple of them out there. Director of El Chicano, right now doing a lot of television. Thank you so much. Did the finale episode of Queen of the South with Alicia Braga. I love her, she's fantastic. Just finished an episode for CW, Legends of Tomorrow, with a great cast over there. And I'm in the mix, I'm working on a project right now with Richard Cabral, a really heartfelt story about the street life in Los Angeles. So that's it. Next.
Cesar Mazariegos. I am currently a writer on The Simpsons, which, I landed through by the grace of God and also the help of Stage 13 when we did High and Mighty.
Yeah!
What's up, everybody? I'm Diego. This is my brother, Andres.
Hi.
We are co-directing brothers. We come from Miami, Florida. We've done a few Miami folks out here. We've done a few horror shorts. We directed for Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV series, season 3. We're currently in development with a feature project with Christine and Stage 13 called Play Dead, and we're currently developing our first feature with Orion Pictures called Casa.
And I'm Jorge Diaz. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American born and raised in Los Angeles. And I am an actor. I do everything from voiceover to commercials to movies and film. And then me and Caesar know each other because we worked on the project High and Mighty together. And yeah.
And you worked in horror as well.
Yeah, I worked in horror as well. So I was one of the leads of Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. And then I worked on a show called Isos High on Hulu. I've worked on episodes of Jane the Virgin. I've worked on I do one of the voices for Elena of Avalor, and then the Captain Underpants series for Netflix, and then a button Lost in Oz in Amazon, and then a lot, just always doing something. Thankfully, bro. Thankfully, yeah. Always doing something, yeah.
And Caesar, I don't think you said where you were from.
Oh, I'm originally from D.C. Family Guatemalan and Colombian.
Cool.
Nice. So now in this round, I would like to ask you about your respective genres. I know for some of you, you've been working in a number of them, but what is your preferred genre? Where do you feel like you have the most chops? And take us through sort of like what was that initial draw for you as a storyteller in creating your own language, possibly informed by your experiences and your influences, growing up wherever you grew up and whatever your kind of specific cultural background might be?
It's a heavy question. Yeesh.
I'd love for you to talk about El Chicano as particularly
definitely,
your independent film that you directed, with your directorial debut.
Definitely, yeah. Well, my background when I first got in the industry, I was a stuntman. I was a stuntman for over 20 years and made the transition to stunt coordinating, second unit directing, and specifically started directing second unit for David O. Russell and Joe Carnahan. And so that's where I developed the love, obviously for action, but also for storytelling and very character-driven stories. And for me, especially with El Chicano, what I wanted to, express visually was the fact that you could balance action with story. And that was what was really important to me. I was blessed and had this great opportunity to not only tell a story about my family and where I was from, but also, organize and generate action and story that I think we pulled off pretty good for what we for the means that we had, you know, so.
Tell me a little bit about the story of El Chicano.
EC's a crazy one. You know, the story basically is, the initial idea of the story came about, I lost a brother to gang violence 15 years ago. He was my baby brother. And I wrote a memoir about his life and started creating it into script form and started to have this great friendship with Joe Carnahan. And eventually, after 10 years of developing it and me coming up in the business, we wrote these 120 pages that were just, we thought were phenomenal. And it's just about these two brothers growing up in East LA and the familiar formula of having one go bad and one go to the good. You know, there was a split. There's a decision that's made at a very young age that one loves that life, that gang life, and the other one wants nothing to do with it. And eventually it becomes full circle where his brother's killed. He thinks he committed suicide. And we find out later on that the Diego character, played by Raul Castillo, wasn't as bad as he thought he was. And he was pursuing this vigilante, anti-hero theme that's been around since the 40s. And so it's this beautiful story about familia, about friendship, about loyalty, and fighting for what you think is right and wrong, even unfortunately if people get taken out, you know, so yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Cesar?
For me, my genre is comedy. I think growing up in DC, it's such a multicultural city. I grew up kind of in a Latino family, in a predominantly black city, going to very multicultural schools in very white neighborhoods. So like, I kind of had to be kind of aware of like all these different cultures. And as a kid who just liked to make people laugh, there's stuff that makes us all laugh, and then there's those little things that make, you know, us individually laugh. And those are like, I think those really sweet jokes that like, when you watch 30 Rock or whatever, and you're like, oh snap, that's me. You know, like you feel kind of seen, a very specific Tracy Morgan joke will really make you think like, oh, that's how I feel like. And it was just kind of like trying to fit in with different people. And after that, it was like, as a storyteller, that's the genre that I kind of picked up on. And you know, like you can be so, like comedy is just disarming. Like if you can make someone laugh, they're just naturally set at ease a little more. So that's where you can kind of sneak in a message about whatever it is you might be trying to talk about, like layer the real stuff underneath. And kind of like same thing with like horror, like those kind of like, there's a tension and then a release, and then underneath that, you know, whatever you're really trying to say is what you can, you know, get that message out, you know? And so that's why, you know, that's where, you know, my love of comedy came.
I want to pause for a second because both of you, Ben and Cesar, have made with High and Mighty, Cesar and Ben with El Chicano have made these sort of superhero, but like a superhero we've never seen before, you know, definitely an anti-hero kind of, you know, fashion. And I always, you know, like to challenge, especially our community with, you know, really complex roles because, you know, anti-heroes are fun too and compelling and complex but yet, you know, for a community that's barely had any heroes, it's very hard to have anti-heroes, right? So I just want to hear a little bit because, you know, you wrote, and you also wrote it as well. So in writing, you know, this particular kind of superhero, was it just like a full-fledged, you know, purge and just no unflinching kind of no wavering road, or were you very conscious of, you know, your superhero was a type that no one had seen before?
You know, it actually happened really organically, and I should have said that when I was talking about EC. The whole, you know, people talk about this is based on my childhood and what I was exposed to as a kid. Obviously, there wasn't a superhero involved at that time, but how that came about was when I was writing the memoir about my brother and how I was, and my mother and my brothers and sisters dealing with this death, I always felt like, I was fortunate. I had some positive role models at a very, very young age. Craig didn't, and I always felt like if he would have had a father, if my dad was around. My mother and my grandmother raised us. My dad wasn't really around. He was very few and in between. And so I built the character around like a metaphor of not having a dad. And so it's just all the kind of visuals I had as a kid, the cape, the mask, the disguise, and then combining that with hope and being a kid from the barrio and growing up where I grew up, you know, welfare kid, government cheese, food stamps, that was us. And to have something that would fight the good fight, and that's where it came from. It was this metaphor of not having a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just developed from there.
Yeah.
For High and Mighty, for those that might not know, it's basically like Unbreakable meets Fridays. So it's like a young dude finds out he might have superpowers, but only when he's drunk or high. And so what started there is just kind of like, oh, this would be kind of a funny idea to do. Let me write a pilot. Maybe it'll give me an agent or whatever. Landed at Stage 13, and when it got there, they actually challenged me to make it more than just like, you know, a never-ending party. You know, guy smokes weed, he floats, or guy drinks and he punches through a wall. You know, what was really at the core of it, and they helped me develop it, was kind of the story of addiction. And I thought that was a really challenging way to go about it. How do you make that funny? It's clearly such a serious issue. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like it fit. Like sometimes you just feel like it's this superpower, makes you more, you know, funnier, more popular. You're better with, you know, the opposite sex or whatever. You feel more at ease. And then when it gets too much, at some point you're wavering. It's a weakness or whatever. And then it's like that monster. So it's kind of like this supervillain and a superhero in a way. And so as far as, you know, the anti-hero thing, I just wanted to make something funny. And if I was going to do the stuff about addiction, I wanted it to be real. That way, it would be a disservice to make it just funny for funny's sake, and that's it. So that's where I felt like putting the honesty in there was the thing that I had to do. And you know, I thank Stage 13 for the opportunity to do that, so, and the challenge.
And Diego and Andres, do you want to talk about your kind of love for horror? Because piggybacking off what Cesar's saying as far as like using genre as a vehicle to, you know, tell some really hard-hitting real stories. I'm thinking of Boniato, that short film that you guys made a while back, but I think was a real, I don't know, calling card and just discovery for a lot of people, and why you're, you know, working with some really awesome people. But do you want to kind of talk about, you know, your point of view through that genre?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, for us, we've always been fascinated with horror, and part of that was because we grew up in a not so great neighborhood in Miami, and our overprotective Cuban mother didn't let us play outside that much. So naturally, we gravitated towards movies.
Television.
And horror, for some reason, was just the one thing that we loved.
We respected it.
We respected it.
Because it was like scary, so it would scare us, so you would respect it. We would change the channel and then go to another channel and then quickly go back.
It was that forbidden thing. You know, when you're a kid, that's like the one thing. I was telling these guys backstage that we weren't allowed to rent those horror movies in Blockbuster Video, but we would read the back of the covers and kind of figure out what the movie was just based on what it was saying.
And then we would make little fan films.
And we would make fan films. So the horror sort of genre started there for us. But, you know, she mentioned Boniato, which was the short film that we made in 2015 that went to Sundance and won a bunch of awards and stuff like that. That one was sort of about our experience living right next to a Home Depot and seeing, you know, all these day laborers just kind of out there. And we lived right next to this neighborhood in Miami called Homestead, and there's just a bunch of fields out there, and you just see these workers every single day. And you know, Andres and I just started thinking, it's like we don't see that perspective that much, especially in horror. And more so, they're never presented in some sort of like heroic or leading role. So that was sort of our goal for Boniato, and really to sort of explore a little bit more that perspective, which was really, really interesting for us.
Yeah. In general, we really love horror because it's not just, it actually encompasses a lot of other genres. If you're doing a really good horror film, you're going to have little scenes that are dramatic. You're going to have a little bit of action if there's a chase in there, a little bit of sci-fi if it's paranormal. So we feel that it really helps us like sort of basically just work on.
And surprisingly, they're super fun to.
Yeah, they're really fun. Yeah, it just helps us. It helps us like do every bit of other genres, you know. So you could sort of practice. That's why you'll see a lot of directors. They usually get their foot in the door with a horror film, like Spielberg or. You know,
Peter Jackson,
all those guys. All the technical guys like to start off with horror films because you get to work with makeup, you get to work with all this other stuff that you could hopefully branch off into bigger things.
And then Jorge, for you as an actor, I mean, starting off in your career, I mean, were you attracted to one genre more than the other? I mean, you've done, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I don't know, more comedy than
I
not.
get cast in comedies a lot, I think because of my natural energy and I'm kind of ADD. But in case you guys don't know, I'm the dude that Caesar was talking about in High and Mighty. I'm the lead of High and Mighty that gets wasted and has superpowers. But what I respond to as an actor, as I've gotten older, I respond to things that have heart to it. Because I think I'm always subconsciously trying to heal like my older brother in a weird way. And the men I had in my family, like the really hard, like my brother was like suffered from addiction and if you look at me and my brother, we're like night and day. It's like, how'd you guys come out of the same mom? Like, what? And my brother's been in jail like 3 times and suffered from addiction. And I feel as a little kid, I looked up to him so much, but then I also wanted to heal my family. And I feel I've always been curious about just human beings. So I'm trained dramatically, but I feel I've been such a goofball growing up amongst my friends that naturally I get cast in comedies all the time, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm that funny, but then it just keeps happening and happening and happening. And so I'm really grateful for it, but what I do respond to are things that do have some sort of healing message at its core, I feel. You know, that's what I'm drawn to, and where I'm able to use both like dramatic and comedic chops, because I've admired like actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Tom Hanks, who like, you watch them dramatically and you're just like, you believe everything that comes out of their mouths, and the same thing comedically, you're just like, these guys are amazing actors. And wherever I could find a project that I could showcase both and have fun while I'm doing it, that's where my heart goes to, yeah.
And you're not scared of, being pigeonholed or anything? I mean, like, or is that you feel like you're still on that journey? And
I'm definitely still on that journey, but then not, because I've had the chance, like I did a miniseries last year with Nat Geo, which got nominated for Critics' Choice Awards. It was a miniseries based on the Iraq War, and I'm one of the leads of that, and that was as heavy of a story as they come. Like, it's based on a true story that happened in 2004, and it was an ambush that happened. And it's just, by the end of it, the message the audience gets is the reality of war. There's no winner in war, and it's super duper heavy. My character brings some sort of lightness to it, but I feel like initially, when I was maybe a couple years ago, I was a little nervous about getting pigeonholed, because I've kind of played like certain kind of characters. I play like a version of my brother, I feel, in like a lot of the projects I do. And but after doing that, and after doing a couple movies, now projects that I just wrapped, I feel more comfortable going like, I can do this too. And I feel like every actor's always trying to prove themselves, like, look, no, but I can do this too, and I can do this too. But it's just a matter of just like always being truthful to who you are, and just finding like your own voice and what you have to offer, your own sensibility, and just kind of like owning that, and just taking that and taking that into every room you're in. You know what I mean? Because it's not about like booking a job. It's just, now I just want to connect to people. When I'm in audition rooms, I'm like, can I just connect to this person? And what am I trying to say here? Like, that's all I care about, whether I get the job or not. Because I was a really shy kid growing up. I was super timid, not amongst my friends, but around adults. I used to hide behind my mom's leg. And I feel I'm always trying to overcome that fear all the time, even as an adult now. And I feel that's why I'm drawn to acting. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I'm always trying to overcome that fear, because I just want to live a fearless life, not let myself get in the way of anything. Yeah.
Yes. I want to talk about what I think is often not talked about. It takes, obviously it takes talent, and you all have, exceptional talent in creating stories and embodying stories. But when it comes to whether in your own independent work that you're creating, and when you're working with like a studio or more, or a network, when it comes to, the time and resources sort of element, and how it affects, what you want to say, and protecting what you want to say. Can we see if, I would love to hear some stories, I don't know, of maybe a challenging moment, whether it's where you had to just find a way to protect the creative, yet still make it flex given any constraints. Again, and it could be really broad, or it could be a very specific moment when it comes to on set and staying on time, or even getting notes that you feel are really just not compromising your point of view.
Running out of money. Running out of money. That's a big one, especially you're doing. There hasn't been a Latin-based film, anything, if you think about Blood in, Blood Out, American Me, La Familia, it's been a while. So it was really tough to even get, we were fortunate to get private financing. But if I can go back to an incident we had, it's like we literally had a half a day left, and we were trying to shoot it was literally 6 pages, and we're in Canada. And the finale scene, the ending of the movie is this SUV has to explode and flip over, and so we're down to the last 5 minutes. We've done all the dialogue, we've done everything. We're fighting time, and we do the explosion. Explosion goes off, but the car doesn't flip, and that's it. We're done, and so we're literally leaving within 48 hours back to Los Angeles to shoot 4 days under the 6th Street Bridge and around East LA. And that money was already budgeted, it was in the schedule. And so we're trying to figure out, basically the producers are coming to me with notes and ideas how to have an alternate ending. Oh man, that's the worst.
Wow.
It's just, you just want to cry. You're like, no. Because you envision as a visualist and as a director, you're like, this is all it is. And you have to find deep down inside, especially when there's money involved or lack of it, what's the alternative? What can I do to still kind of give the same theme? You got to sometimes trust your instincts, spend some time. For me, it was just being alone and just trying to wrap my head around it. And the technical side of it, of just going through dailies. So I was literally going through dailies on the plane back, and we were able to figure it out. We realized that basically, in a nutshell, it was El Chicano and Shotgun in this SUV, and they're gunning at each other. And at the very last minute, he lays down the bike, tucks underneath the SUV, and explodes, and it flips over. And then we cut back to EC holding a grenade pin in his hand. So the grenades were attached to the motorcycle. That wasn't going to happen. So as I was going back into the dailies, I found a couple of takes where I did like a 14 mil wide profile, and we were doing the chicken piece where they're going right at each other and they just pass. So as soon as I saw that, I realized, oh, wait a minute. Instead of having the grenades on the bike, I can have them on him. And as they do the pass, all I need is a cut of him throwing him into the side window. So now they're inside of the SUV, and we can have it explode, and it'll still work. And but we didn't have any money. So we had a half a day left, and I was really fortunate. I had kids probably your age, geez. I had 2 sons, Damien and Keenan, they're 32 and 31. They're young stunt guys in the business. One's a great cameraman now. And he brought his red camera out, used a credit card, went to Panavision, got these anamorphic lenses that my son said that these are the ones that are really close to what we've been shooting for the last 21 days. And I pulled every favor I had. 20 years of doing stunts, I had every Latin actor out there for free, and we shot guerrilla style. We went down to, I think it's under 6th Street Bridge, it's El Pato, and we shot those pieces, we did some runs. We shot for about almost 10 hours, probably longer than that, 12 hours. Everybody brought food, and we got it done. With no permits, nothing. I apologize about that. There was no permits. Hey, listen, you got to fight the good fight, especially for this movie. And it was really important to all of us. And they were there to support me. And it's great to have, especially within Latinos, to support each other. And I had at least 20 guys out there, including my sons. And one of my best friends, Joe Carnahan, was out there with also my business partner, Frank Torres. And we finished it. And, with glue and tape and everything else, I mean, literally the last shot of that movie is EC on the bike, coming underneath the underpass. And of course it was cool, Black Cat accidentally just ran by within the frame. And as it goes by, we tilt down to the stop sign. That's my son's shot. He shot that. That last shot was literally the very last shot of the day, and we got it. you have to fight the good fight. You have to keep an open mind and be collaborative at all times. But it's tough, you know? You have to find a way.
We have to innovate, yeah.
Yeah, you have to innovate,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
definitely.
Do you guys have any stories?
For me, it was more like an in the room, on the page kind of thing, which like literally it's happened this week. You know, on The Simpsons, this is my first episode that I'll be writing. The table read is next Thursday. We did an in-room read, and stuff that I thought was just hilarious, like it's just not working, hearing it out loud. And, you know, it's just a little bit like, well, you know, maybe we're all not actors, so we're just writers, so maybe, you know, we could be delivered different. And then my showrunner was just like, now there's something about the bookends to this episode that needs to change. And I was like, no, but if we lose the bookends, like, we kind of lose, like, there is without giving too much away, there's kind of like a message to this episode that I was very particularly proud of, and I felt like, no, we lose that message. There's a political message there, there's something I feel is really important to say. And I got really like, kind of like, you know, heated about it. Not in like a bad, like, oh, we gotta get this dude out of here kind of way, but like, you know, that showed that I clearly cared or whatever. But it was just like one of the things they teach you going through like, well, like I was lucky enough to go through the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, which I got kind of as a direct, you know, because I did High and Mighty through Warner Brothers. That they teach you there is just like, you are there to serve the show, you know what I'm saying? Like, people have been doing this longer than you have. Learn how to take the note. There are things you can fight for and pick and choose your battles. And there are things that sometimes you have to kind of like stand back for a second and realize, oh, okay. So like the very next day, I was still kind of a little sour. I was like, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. And just in the room, everyone's pitching jokes that make these bookends better and stand out and not be the thing that I was afraid they were gonna be. And so now I feel absolutely, you know, kind of happy and thrilled to see how we go into next week's read. So, you know, sometimes you gotta learn to shut up. Sometimes you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, I guess.
I'm like staring at this countdown. Time went really fast.
Damn, 2 minutes.
I'm gonna, but I do want to say one thing to start wrapping it up because all of you are just like incredible artists. But I would be remiss as a Latina if not to acknowledge or identify the elephant in the room. There's no woman or woman identifying artists up on here on the stage. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. We have some really exciting producers that working in genre on the LATINXT list. But I would love to hear from everyone really quickly. If there's anyone out there who's woman or woman identifying, working in genre that you're impressed with. And let's just go down the line because I feel like we have literally a minute and a half.
I'll be quick. I tell you something I'm a big fan of that she is really moving quick. Eva Longoria. Eva is killing it. She's just picked up the Hot Cheetos. Yeah. Hot Cheetos film. Educated Latina woman who's really put in the time, in front of the cameras, established herself. Now she's a great storyteller. She's directing television. She's doing 2 films this year coming, and I'm really proud of her. She's a friend, and I'm just excited. I'm just really excited for her.
For me, I don't know these people. I just kind of like follow them on social media, and I kind of like all their work. But like Vanessa Ramos is someone who, even before I was writing, I would see her name and credits on Superstore, which is a show I really like, and says a lot politically while still being very funny and having the most multicultural cast kind of on any network show. I think she's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine now, but she's really funny, and I've suggested her for jobs, on The Simpsons. I don't know this lady. I hope she's cool. But and also Marcela Arguello had a really funny stand-up album called The Woke Bully that, again, I don't know her, but I thought it was one of the funnier stand-up albums I heard this year.
Nice.
Cool. We'll be quick. For me, it's Gigi Salguerrero. She did a feature on Hulu called Culture Shock that was really cool. You guys should check it out, and I think she actually has a deal with Blumhouse and Hulu now, right?
She's overall with Blumhouse, Mexican-Canadian
Awesome.
director.
Lucky to have met her. She's really cool and up and coming. And
there's this great horror film I saw last year called Braid. I'm probably going to butcher her name, but it was made by Mitzi Piron. Fantastic movie. If you guys are fans of Italian giallo, Mario Bava, Dario Argento, you guys have to check it out.
Awesome. All right, well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank all of you. Please check out their work. And let's support them so they could, reach the highest level this game has to offer.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, where's the mark? Okay, there's the mark. Yes, you're an actor. Hit the mark and deliver your lines, goddamn. How are you guys? Woo! Yes, this is my peeps right there. Okay, cool. Well, I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm not lying when I say that the Jane the Virgin team is like a family to me. To be here tonight to introduce one of the show's writers and celebrate his work brings great warmth to my heart. He always jokes that we are like Brad Pitt and Edward Norton in the movie Fight Club, no? He's a skinny, neurotic writer, and I am everything he wishes he could be. I mean, he says that, not me. That's him, no? But what a writer Rafael is. He brought authenticity to our show when talking about immigration issues, Latinx issues, and so much more. In addition to being an accomplished writer and performer, he's a fierce education activist and is the executive director of both the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival, LALIF, and of the Youth Cinema Project. Please welcome to the stage my dear, dear friend, Rafael Agustin. I will only drive 4 hours back and forth from Los Angeles to introduce you. Only.
Look at that, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I asked the producers of the show to please make sure he stands a little bit away from me so he doesn't make me look that bad. Thank you so much for being here, my brother. I love you. I love all of you. Thank you so much for this incredible honor. Writing for Jane the Virgin has been the highlight of my life, second only to being the executive director of the Youth Cinema Project, a program that essentially took film graduate school and started it at the 4th grade because we believe that students, especially students from marginalized communities, will rise to the level of expectation. And in turn, we've been able to double reading and writing proficiency, triple school engagement, and create social emotional empowerment in the classroom. Our goal was never to create filmmakers. Our goal was always to create lifelong learners and to help all of our students from our community go to college. As a formerly undocumented student myself, I can't tell you how important it is to empower and support the children of our community that are usually forgotten by our system. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Youth Cinema Project.
It is paramount to a society to have representation of all. I mean, look at what Miles Morales did.
That was the wrong clip. It's okay. It's really late in the evening.
Film influences the human mind. It's a very powerful medium.
The way you address diversity is by going back to the drawing board and starting in 4th grade.
The mission of the Youth Cinema Project is very simple. It's about closing the achievement gap in the classroom for our most underprivileged children and to close the opportunity gap in the entertainment industry for our communities of color.
Scene 5, cat, take 2.
The program involves 2 filmmaking mentors going into the classroom, and they teach the entire process of film. So how to generate ideas, how to write the script, all the planning and pre-production, filming itself in production as well as post. They go through the process treating the students as colleagues rather than lecturing to them.
Action! Get in the car! No, please! Cut!
It's inspired the community to the point of where kids are actually attending school more.
We talk about project-based learning. So rather than just taking a book and talking about a particular set of concepts in the book, it's got a practical application.
I've learned to not be shy and to believe in myself and to never give up.
The biggest thing I learned in this program was to collaborate with others to express themselves.
I think it's just a different way to approach learning.
This is the only program I know that brings an industry, in this case, entertainment industry, into the classroom, into the school site, into the district.
Creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. All those values are so much a part of filmmaking.
We create lifelong learners and lifelong problem solvers. This is the only program I know where teachers, principals, superintendents, and board members are saying this gets 100% engagement.
I think this program should be around again. There's other programs, it's more like look at the board and you're just gonna learn this. And here in film, you actually got to mess around with equipment.
Why not sound? Sound? Camera? Rolling. Day 1, scene 2, take 3, mark. Action.
Why are you here?
Same reason you are.
George, get back here.
I mean, I wish I would have had this class when I was in the 4th grade. My work would have been completely different.
Our ultimate goal is to try to get the Youth Cinema Project inside every 4th grade class throughout the United States.
I am the founder and the creator of the Youth Cinema Project, and I'm very honored and proud of it.
There are many things that Jaime and I can say about the Youth Cinema Project, but we really do believe that actress and activist Zoe Saldana summarized it best, which is why that clip was previously shown. Okay, so can we show it now?
It is paramount to a society to have representation of all. I mean, look at what Miles Morales did in Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse. It's the first time that a superhero looks like us. And he's just as American, and he's just as a New Yorker, and he's just as from Brooklyn. And that is important because if you're a 7-year-old and you see yourself reflected in a superhero movie, or it could be a scientist in a documentary, or, you know, it could be anything. It could be an astronaut, you know, you believe that you can do it.
Yes.
And speaking of superheroes in middle school, can you please help me welcome to the stage all the way from Barbara Worth Junior High in Imperial County in Brawley. Please welcome to the stage the students of the Youth Cinema Project. Woo!
Protocol is high five and go. High five.
Woo!
I want to vote.
Hell yeah.
Man. I want you to stay right here. There will be.
Welcome.
I told you you're gonna meet him.
Welcome.
I told you. Get over here.
Don't fall. Don't fall.
Let's come on.
Rafa, there are a lot.
There are a lot of them. Latinos, we have a lot of kids. We are a fertile people. We apologize. Jaime, get over here. He's going to say hi to everybody. In the meantime, Jaime and I would love to give the floor.
85 more.
They're on their way, almost there. I think that one failed. That's an old student right there.
Now, some of you go to this side. Come like.
Yeah, come
like
over here.
7,
Here.
follow me. 7, yeah.
Now, Jaime and I would love to give the stage over to one of the students of the Youth Cinema Project, Faith. You have a few words she wants to say with all of you.
I'm very nervous, so if I mess up, I'm super sorry. Good evening, and thank you for having our Youth Cinema Project class here tonight. We are honored and very overwhelmed to be with you all here today. We never imagined that when we stepped into Ms. Corsalino and Mr. Amadon's ELA class at Barbara Worth Junior High, that we would be part of something that would change our lives forever. If you aren't sure what the Youth Cinema Project is, it is a program that provides opportunities to be creative, to communicate, and to collaborate, and to use critical thinking skills while telling our stories through filmmaking. From zombies and being removed from homes, to time travel and romance, our stories are our own. We write them from our real lives and our imagination, but they are ours. When we started our YCP journey, we were kids who thought it was cool to be in a movie, but it was so much more than that. We had to listen to one another. We had to communicate in the adult way. We had to use our imaginations, and we had to struggle with what we didn't know and learn it together. It was often difficult for us to work together, but we overcame those challenges, and our stories evolved into movies that we are now proud of. YCP means everything to me. It has made me believe that I can achieve anything I put my mind to. It helped me manage my emotions and not lash out at everyone. You can even ask my mom. I started 7th grade as a shy and unhappy young lady. I am no longer shy and I'm not unhappy. I made a family in YCP and friends who have forever changed my life. Every student should be so lucky to be part of the Youth Cinema Project. I can't imagine what my 7th grade year would have been like had I not been in this class. I want to thank Mr. Olmos and Mr. Augustin for creating a wonderful program that teaches young minds that we are capable of anything and the future is ours. We are the future, and we still have so many stories to experience and tell. So thank you very much.
And I think you want to hand it over to Mr. Robert Rodriguez.
Thank you so much, Faith, for your words and taking the time to join us tonight. Aren't these kids amazing? Lately, we've been seeing that we can learn a lot from you, young kids skipping class and telling it to us adults as it is. And thank you, Rafa, for your work and for making this possible. I started at this age. This is the perfect age to start. These are the voices of tomorrow. Tonight, I was energized by hearing all these younger, determined, and talented minds. Could we bring everyone to the stage that was part of this tonight, please? Because, you know, how Lynn and Zoe and myself got into the industry, oh, there we go, was really, hey, everybody come in here. Look at all this talent. You know, the way Lynn and Zoe and myself got into the industry, we all got in our own crazy way, and we just felt that our commitment was to not let the next generation of Latinx creators be left up to chance. We were going to take action and make stuff happen. So I want to, at the end of the day, by making a commitment in front of all of you and to all of you, that this is just the beginning. Know that and trust that we are committed to a partnership that would lead to a lasting impact on everyone's careers. So I'm making it my personal responsibility to make sure that what we saw here tonight translates into action and further opportunities. Thank you for joining us, and have a good night.